Well, good evening. I'm Alan Jackson, and welcome back to Nashville. You don't have to travel to a distant country to find division, hate, and racism. It's all around us. Well, fortunately, so are efforts to fight against them. It was just days ago that marchers descended on Washington for International Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's an annual event to remind us all of the human capacity for evil. Tragically, the anti-Semitism is brought forth by an event like that, and we see the hatred of the Jewish people is still alive and well, just below the surface, even in our nation. On American campuses, this has been a season of protest by students who support Israel and those who support the efforts of the terrorist group Hamas. It's almost beyond imagination that people will campaign on behalf of terrorists whose stated objective is the annihilation of the Jewish people. And yet it's a reality amongst us. In the Middle East, as the fragile peace continues, U.S. intelligence sources estimate that Hamas has used the pause in combat to recruit more than 15,000 additional fighters. So far, the promised exchange of hostages for prisoners goes on, but the world waits, understanding it's a very tenuous agreement. The tension of hatred lurks over the temporary pause in the conflict, and one of the principal ingredients in that hatred is the aforementioned anti-Semitism. Hostility against the Jews, it's nothing new. You find examples across history, but it continues to find fertile ground around the world, including here in the United States. Well, our guest tonight has studied that philosophy of hate from several perspectives, as a scholar, a journalist, and as a government official. Ellie Cohanim served at the State Department in the first Trump administration. She's an expert on the Middle East, especially Israel and Iran, where she was born. I'm so glad you could join us for the program, Ellie. Welcome to Nashville.
Thank you, Pastor. It's so wonderful to be with you. Thank you for having me on.
Well, we are delighted to have the time with you. To start, tell me, if you will, what you think of the current ceasefire. Are you pleased with its progress?
Pastor, I am pleased with the progress, and I think that most importantly, the Israeli people are thrilled from everything I've been observing, watching Israeli television, Israeli social media. As you know, Pastor Allen, there is a thought in the Bible and the Jewish tradition that every life that's saved is like a universe that has been saved. And so, you know, when we see these young women coming out of the tunnels of Gaza, understanding the hell that they've been through, and seeing them reunited with their families, their loved ones, all of Israeli society is celebrating right now. And so certainly we know that this hostage deal is incredibly impactful and important for Israel and, again, Israeli society and really world Jewry. Everyone is celebrating right now. So I think that this deal has been critical for Israel, for the Jewish people. And it's a multi-phase deal. So phase 2 and phase 3, I think we'll have to suspend judgment and see if it pulls through.
A friend in Israel sent me some video of those 4 young women when they were reunited with their families. It was truly remarkable. It was as if their families had received them back from the dead. It's a remarkable gift to the families and to all of Israel, I think, when I watch it unfold.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And Israeli society has gone through just the worst that anyone could imagine. As you know, as your audience knows, since October 7th, October 7th was the deadliest massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And so seeing these hostages returned to Israel and to the embrace of their families, I think it has been just a small ray of light in some of the most painful days for all of Israel.
Amen. Were you at all surprised by events so far? Maybe what hopes do you have for the future?
I have to say, I think it's also been just dark times for these past 4 years. And the beginning of the Trump administration, I think, is giving a lot of hope for many millions of people worldwide, including here at home in the United States. I can share with you some of the executive orders that we've seen issued from the Trump administration already, from President Trump in the White House, that I think has been giving hope to a lot of people, including the executive order that gives the United States a pathway to expel and deport any immigrants or migrants who are in the United States who are expressing support for foreign terrorist organizations, Hamas and Hezbollah. And that is what we've been seeing unfold across our campuses, sadly, since October 7th, is a lot of support for these foreign terrorist organizations. And so the Trump administration has now given the pathway for the United States authorities to deport these people from our campuses and from our streets. And so I think that besides giving, again, the authorities the ability to deport those who are expressing support for foreign terrorist organizations, what this executive order does also is create a cultural shift where the message of the United States is giving is that we will not harbor those who support terrorists and those who want to see genocide committed against the Jewish people, those who are calling for, from the river to the sea, expulsion of the Jewish presence in the Middle East. And so this is a huge sea shift that we're going to experience, I think, in the days ahead of us in the United States. It's a welcome change from the Trump administration, from President Trump himself.
You know, I know we all pray for the peace of Jerusalem, or I hope we do, but is there a realistic chance that a lasting peace can be achieved?
Well, Pastor, I was really honored to be serve as Deputy Envoy to Combat Anti-Semitism in the first Trump administration, and in that role, I played a small part in what we called the Warm Peace Team, and that was the team that worked on what eventually would become the Abraham Accords peace deals. And so, I was honored and privileged to be a part of that history that President Trump and the team made in terms of bringing peace to the region, the first peace deals in the region at that time in 26 years. I have no doubt that President Trump is going to prioritize bringing further peace to the region. He has told us that this is a priority for him. And at the end of the first Trump administration, President Trump announced that there were at least 8 to 10 countries that were ready at that time to make peace deals with Israel, to have more normalization with Israel. And so without a doubt, this is something that we're going to see President Trump work on. I just have no doubt that this is a priority for the president. What he's doing right now, though, is stabilizing the region, right? President Trump is stabilizing the region. He's working on the ceasefire with Hamas. He's working on the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. And so once we have kind of like a stability in the region, I think we will see the Trump administration work on further peace deals. Now, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is certainly it is the crown jewel. It's the ultimate peace deal that everybody wants to see, normalization between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Israel. The reason for that is that the Saudis are considered the holder of Islam. They are the country that has Mecca and Medina in their country. And so as the holder of Islam, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, whatever they do, they are the ultimate leaders for the entire Muslim world. And so when the Saudis make peace, a hopeful peace with Israel, what they will do is they will green light for the entire Muslim world to follow that lead. And so that is going to really change history as we know it. And I know that if there's anyone who can make that happen, it is President Donald Trump. And so, I expect that that work that he did in the first administration to pave the path for peace, I have no doubt that President Trump will continue to do that. And again, if there's anyone who can make that history happen, it is President Trump.
Well, we'll be back with Ellie Cohanim after a short break. If you'd like to jump in on this conversation, you can use this time to write us an email. Send it to comments@alanjacksonnow.com. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back to Nashville. We're talking with Ellie Cohanim. She's a scholar of the Middle East and an expert on the painful subject of anti-Semitism. Well, the Holocaust is more than 80 years behind us, but it still casts a long and painful shadow. You and many others work ceaselessly to make sure we'll never forget. Do you think there's a danger that we could lose touch with the horrors of that?
Pastor, I can't thank you enough for raising this subject. As you know, just yesterday we marked International Holocaust Remembrance Day. There were ceremonies that took place across the United States, at the United Nations, in Poland, which was the location of the Auschwitz-Birkenau Liberation Memorial, and in Israel as well. I am incredibly concerned about the next generation forgetting about the Holocaust, not learning the lessons of the Holocaust. What we're finding is that Americans in particular can't name any of the death camps. They don't know how many Jews were murdered, or that Jews were murdered at all in a genocide that was just one of the darkest periods of world history. I also think one of the lessons that's lost on the international community is something that Ambassador Ronald Lauder spoke about at the ceremony in Poland yesterday, which is that Jews are the canary in the coal mine. The hatred that begins with the Jew never ends with the Jew. We lost 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. But does your audience know that 60 million people were killed during the Holocaust and World War II? That devastation that took place of 60 million others that were killed as a part of World War II and the Holocaust, that devastation took place because world leaders did not bring a stop to Hitler and the Nazis. They didn't stop the anti-Semitism and the Jew hate when it was starting in Germany and spreading all across Europe. So I think one of the key lessons for the international community, for my Christian friends, for everyone who's listening right now, is that it's so imperative to stop Jew hate at the beginning when it's first raising its ugly head, because the devastation never stops with Jews. It hits everyone. It wreaks havoc on societies that allows anti-Semitism to flourish. And so that to me is one of the key lessons of the Holocaust. It's not a Jewish problem, it's an everyone problem.
I agree. You know, there's a biblical phrase that tells us to train up the children in the way they should go. In Israel, I think they do a much better job of training the generations as they're coming up to be familiar with the history of the Jewish people, the Holocaust. How can we do a better job of that in America to help our younger people remember history so we don't repeat those darkest chapters?
Well, I certainly believe that Holocaust education should be a part of the curriculum, and I know that the United States Congress right now has a bill in front of it to do that. But Pastor, I would argue that what happens in the home is more important than anywhere else. And so, to all of your incredible listeners that are watching and who are with us right now, please talk to your children, and the clergy that are watching right now. Please talk in your churches about what took place in the Holocaust and World War II, but also, what our country has experienced over this last year, which has been horrific anti-Semitism with these pro-Hamas rallies that have taken place all across our country. Talk to the kids about it, about why we cannot let anti-Semitism grow, why we need to each take a stand. And, every person has a voice and a duty. So, for the kids, it's maybe speaking out on social media and taking a stance and saying that, they stand with the Jewish people, that they stand with their Jewish neighbors, that they stand with the Jewish state of Israel as she fights a seven-front war, that they stand with the Jewish students on campus who are being assaulted oftentimes just for the fact that they're Jewish. Again, I think that if each one of us can show courage and bravery, it means so much to every American Jew. And again, I think that that what parents teach their kids, what pastors and ministers and clergy speak about in the churches, that often can go a long way and even further than what the government can do.
How has the current conflict in Israel with Hamas and then Hezbollah affected the American Jewish community?
Well, I think that it has been heartbreaking for American Jews, one, to witness the horrific scenes that came out on October 7th, often from the Hamas terrorists' own GoPro cameras. We've seen just the most horrible images of what Hamas committed, the atrocities that they committed on October 7th. The sexual atrocities they committed against women, the slaughter of babies and children. Again, scenes that came out of Israel on October 7th have been some of the most horrific scenes since the Holocaust. And then after that, Pastor, we saw October 7th denialism. So again, while it was the terrorists themselves who captured much of these scenes on their GoPro cameras, and also security cameras and other very verifiable sources that have documented what happened on October 7th, there's also been this wave of denial of the atrocities of October 7th, just like we've seen denial of the Holocaust. And then for American Jews to, experience this trauma, and then to have a pro-Hamas movement take over our country, that has been an additional horror for us. And so I think, and then seeing authorities in a lot of places, I don't want to politicize this, but sadly, it's been many Democrat-run states and cities where they've allowed this lawlessness to take place, where we've seen this pro-Hamas movement all across the country. And look, I can point to places like University of Texas, a red state, where immediately the authorities brought in the police and they shut down wherever there was violence and lawlessness. So there are steps that authorities can take, and often we're not seeing it in Democrat-run states. We are seeing it in Republican-run states. Again, I am hopeful that with this incoming Trump administration, we're going to see a different approach where the lawlessness is not going to be tolerated, and we're going to see this, from the White House and on down. And so I do expect, Pastor, that the country is going to have a different approach when laws are broken and when we're seeing pro-terror sentiment. It's just not going to be tolerated any longer.
Sounds wonderful to me. Well, Ellie Cohanim, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience did as well.
Pastor, I want to thank you again for having me on, and for all the support that we're seeing from our Christian friends, both for Jewish Americans and for the Jewish state of Israel. We are so grateful for it.
Well, we stand together. In a moment, I'll have some thoughts of my own to share with you, and later, your emails. The inbox is full. We'll be right back. If you visit the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, you'll find they have planted trees on the perimeter of a good bit of the campus in memory of the righteous among the Gentiles, the non-Jewish people who stood up for the Jews during the World War II and the Holocaust. The question my Israeli friends ask when you're there at that is, why are there so few trees? Well, I believe history helps us understand how we can respond today. And my invitation to you is to use your voice to be an advocate for the Jewish people, for the state of Israel. That will often put you in a minority position, but it will put you in the midst of the purposes of God. I'm quite willing to stand with God, even if it's not fashionable, and my advocacy for the state of Jerusalem and the Jewish people and their right to be in that land is derived from the Word of God and not just my opinion. I hope you'll join me in that. If you have Jewish friends in your community, use your voice to tell them you're praying for them, that it's a delight to stand with them and to see the purposes of the nation of Israel emerge in this generation. If we'll do that, there's more reasons for hope than despair. I promise. We'll be back in just a moment with your emails. Thank you for your emails, your thoughts and perspectives. They are valuable to us. Catherine wrote, "Thank you for your good ministries that help us understand the world we live in from a Judeo-Christian perspective. Please help us understand why the mass deportations of illegals is not against Christian values. I need to know how to think about these actions and how to respond to statements and questions addressed to me by people trying to either understand or undermine." It's a really good question, Catherine, and I think it's centered in that word illegal. Anything that begins with illegal, we don't want to overlook or encourage more of. If you're making illegal withdrawals from the bank, even if you're doing them for what you imagine to be good motives, if you're going to help people, if you're going to be generous, if you're going to feed the poor, it's still illegal and you're stealing someone else's money. Well, illegal immigration, everything that comes after the word illegal is destructive. It's not compassionate. There's a lot of voices trying to bring confusion. I think we can find clarity in the midst of it. Thank you for your email. I'm Alan Jackson, and I pray you have a wonderful evening.